Hey guys, this is Lucas from Better Coding Academy, and in this video I will be showing you how to build this iOS springboard I made in React. So this was made mostly using React Spring to do all the animations, and we also use styled components to do the main styling for this project. So let's start off from the very beginning. I've got terminal open over here, and what I'm going to do here is I'm going to open up this directory, which is currently empty, inside of Visual Studio Code. So now I've got mine open here. Now we can put this terminal here on the right, and we're going to continue from here. So first thing I'm going to do is create a package.json file, and inside of this file, I'm going to add parcel bundler as a dev dependency. So now once that's finished, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into package.json, and I'm going to add a script here. So scripts, and then I'm going to add inside of here, watch, and we're going to write parcel src / index.html. So now we're going to create this file here. So new file src / index.html creates the file inside the directory, and we're just going to create a very basic HTML file and remove all the stuff that we don't need to worry about right now. We're going to call the title here React iOS Springboard. So now here we're going to do div id equals app, and then script src equals /index.js. So our app is the entry point for our React application, and this file will be the entry point for our JavaScript. So now let's create a new file here. We're going to call this one index.js, and inside of this file we are going to do import React from React, import render from React DOM, and we are going to do render h1 working, if I can spell that correctly, document.getElements by ID, and then we're going to write app here. So now that we have this, if we go over here to the side and we type yarn watch, what will happen is Parcel will automatically start to install these dependencies here. It figures out that it needs them in order to run, so it's going to install those. So now we're going to wait for that to install. And now that that's done, let's go over into Google Chrome and let's open up localhost 1234, and you see that our page here says working. So I'm actually going to keep this one open for a second just so we can have a reference point. And now we're going to start building the rest of the application here, because obviously we just can't keep it just saying working. So what we're going to do is I'm actually going to create a component inside of root here, and this is going to be the root component that contains everything that we work on in this video. So I've got components root.js, and I'm going to use one of my handy boilerplates to just set up a simple file like this, and we're also going to set up another file called index.js, and we're going to do that. So now that we have root over here, what we're going to do is import this inside of index.js. So import roots from /component/root, and we're going to render it onto the page. So now if we do root like that, and we go over to Google Chrome, you'll notice that it shows root over here, and we can probably zoom this in just a little bit. So now inside of our root component here, what we're going to do is we are actually going to get styled components set up. So we're going to go here and we're going to write import styled from styled components. So this, if we save, will trigger an install. But before we do that, we are going to create a styled wrapper here. So now inside of wrapper here, we're going to write display flex. We're going to give this one a height 100. We're going to do justify content center, and you'll see what this does in just a second. We have these properties here, width and height 100%, and we are going to put the wrapper inside of our root. So we're going to do wrapper here, and we're just going to write height. And now once we do that, we're going to save this file, and it's going to start triggering an install. So now that we've got that, if we go over into Google Chrome, you'll notice that it says hi over here. But if we actually inspect element, you'll notice that our width and height don't actually really apply. You see that even though we did width 100%, height 100%, it's only this tall. And the div is the same here, and the body is the same here. So what's actually causing it is that our whole content from HTML to body to the app to this div all are too small. Well, these three are too small, which causes this one to be too small. So in order to fix this problem, we are going to add in some global styles into our project. So to do this, we're going to add create global style here. And what we're going to do is write const global style is equal to create global style like this. And this sets up a global style, and I'll show you how this works in just a second. But what we're going to do is write HTML body and then the app as well. Remember, hash app is the same as this one here. We're going to do width 100% and height 100% as well. So now that we have that, we are going to be including the global style as a component inside of our root, and we're just going to put a fragment around it so we don't have to put it inside of wrapper. And now that we've done that, you'll notice that if we right click and inspect here, our wrapper actually takes up the whole page here. However, you'll notice that we have this padding on the edges here. So in order to get rid of that padding, we can just do HTML body, margin 0, padding 0 like that. And now you'll notice that it is straight at the top of the page, and this takes up all of it there, which is really good because that's what we have to have in order to build this whole thing like that here. So now what we're going to do is we're actually also going to include this font here. This one I used is Roboto, so we're going to be including that same font. So if we just go to google.com/fonts, we can just grab the Roboto custom font to put into here. So I'm going to go into here and type Roboto, and then I'm going to press plus here, go here, and we are going to use the font weight of 300 because that's the one that looks the most appropriate. Now you can use the one that Apple gives by default, but I think that the browser support isn't as good, especially across operating systems. So we are going to use Roboto as a pretty clean alternative that looks pretty good as well. So now that we have that here, we're going to go under here and write body, font family Roboto, and then font weight 300. So now let's save that and let's go back into here. And now you notice that our hi word has the Roboto font applied to it. So now we're not going to worry too much about that for the moment. But what we're going to do is we are going to set up yet another component inside of our wrapper, and we are going to call this component Springboard. So springboard.js. We're going to create this file real quick. And then new file here, index.js, springboard like so. And we're going to save that. And then inside of root here, we are going to be importing Springboard. So to do that, we are just going to go here and then import Springboard from Springboard. Probably just copy that and then go here. And inside of our wrapper, we are going to do Springboard like so. So now that we've got that, inside of Springboard here, we currently have an H1, but what we're going to do is we are going to set up a very basic backdrop, including the iOS wallpaper. So what we're going to do here is firstly import styled from styled components as well. Do that one more time, and we are going to go here and write const wrapper equals style.div, and now let's give our div some proportions first and foremost. So we're going to give it a height of 60 rem and a width of 30 rem. So this is a ratio of 2:1, which pretty closely mimics, I think, the iPhone 10. So this should be pretty appropriate here. And what we're going to do now is we are going to grab the iOS 11 default wallpaper. So you can actually just do a quick search of that online, and I mean, feel free to use whichever image you want. But this is the one that I used in the original, so I'm going to create an exact copy of that here as well. So now we've got this one over here. These are pretty much all fine. We're going to just use this one here. And I'm just going to click on this link here to go to the website, and then click on the wallpaper, and here is the wallpaper. Whilst that's loading, we can press save. And what I'm actually going to do is go straight into the Springboard directory here and just call it iOS 11 default wallpaper.jpg. So now once I've got that, the file is downloading. It is quite a big file, so I'll let that take its time, and we are going to go here and we're going to import this file. So import iOS 11 default wallpaper from /iOS 11 default wallpaper.jpg. So this is the image here. This specifically is a URL which resolves to this image. Parcel helps us set that up, and then we can do background image URL, and then we're going to pass it in like that inside of the templating syntax here, and then we are going to do background position center, or you can just write center once, background size, auto 100%. So this will give us a height of 100%, and the width of it will depend upon that. So now that we've got that properly downloaded here, let's press save one more time, and we are going to put the wrapper into our Springboard here. So we can do that, and let's save, and let's go over here, and you'll notice that we have our wallpaper on the page, which is pretty cool. So now if we want to get the black background color here, really all we have to do is inside of body here, just add in background color black. Really simple. So now once we've done that, we have the black background color, and it's actually pretty closely matching the original already. However, we don't have these super cool icons, so we're going to be implementing those now. So inside of our Springboard here, what we can actually do is we can start adding in our icons and our folders. However, for the purposes of this project, I'm going to add a little bit of modularity into this system here, and I'll show you what I mean by that. So inside of root, what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a configuration constant here, and we're going to just write this. So ID1 name is going to be work. I'll probably put this on one line, and then let's just copy this one and do it 4 times. So the second one will be productivity, and this one will be social, and this one will be education. So we're specifically specifying a unique ID for each of them because using an index is technically a bad idea. And what we're going to do is we are going to be passing these into the Springboard. So Springboard folders equals folders like so. And inside of our Springboard over here, we're going to get the folders from here like so. And then inside of our wrapper, we can do folders.map, and then let's just say folder. And then what we're going to do here is we'd include the folder component, but we don't have that yet. So instead, let's just create a div and let's just make it show folder on the page like that. So now that we've done that, let's have a look at our page. And if you can see here, it says the word folder 4 times in really small text there. We can probably zoom that in a little bit. So we have these 4 here. Obviously, that's not exactly what we want right now. But now let's start adding in the actual folders themselves. So what we're going to do is inside of Springboard, because we are using folder strictly inside of Springboard, we create it inside of there as well. We do folder.js. I'm going to create this file real quick. And let's also create an index.js file. So now we've got this file, so index.js import and export folder. We've got our folder here, and we are going to be importing this here as well. So now instead of doing this, we're going to do folder, and we're going to specify a key, which is going to be folder.id, and let's do this way. So now you see we have 4 big H1s that say folder, and the reason for that is because we have an H1 inside of here. So now what we're going to do inside of our folder is, if you notice in the original example here, all of them have the icons of Facebook, Messenger, and WhatsApp. So that's kind of something which we've set in stone. It's not something that I wanted to add in terms of configuration for the scope of this project. It is something that you can customize and do on your own. But for now, we are using the same 3 icons across the project. So I'm going to grab these from my other folder over here. So I've got folder, and I'm just going to paste in these 3 icons. Now you can get these on the internet quite easily. I just named them quite consistently to be Facebook-logo.png, Messenger-logo.png, and WhatsApp-logo.png. So you can pretty much just do the same thing like that. And now what we're going to do is inside of here, let's start putting in this whole thing together. So first and foremost, we need to import styled components. So import styled from styled components, and we're going to do const wrapper as always, styled.div. And inside of this div here, we are actually not going to be adding that many styles. But first and foremost, let's do align items center, display flex, and we are going to do flex flow column no wrap, and we're going to do user select none to prevent it from being selected. We're also going to add hover cursor pointer, which allows us to have the pointer cursor when we hover over it. Pretty self-explanatory. So now we're going to do a wrapper here like this. And inside of this wrapper, we are going to be including some stuff. So first and foremost, let's get the folder that we pass in. So firstly, let's pass in a folder prop here. So folder equals folder. And inside of here, we are going to be taking that folder prop. And inside of our wrapper, we're going to do folder name and then folder.name like so. So now that we've done that, let's also define folder name here as well. And folder name is relatively simple. It's just style.span, and we're going to write color white. And let's also do margin top 0.5 rem. So just a little bit of margin on the top. And on top of folder name here, we are going to do folder icons. And folder icons, we're going to do inside of here, app icon src equals Facebook logo. And yes, I am going to be including all of these. And this one's going to be Messenger logo. And this one's going to be WhatsApp, the lowercase a logo. So the reason I do lowercase a is because I don't really have a hyphen there. So I think it makes sense. It's consistent that way. So we're going to go here and write import Facebook logo from /Facebook-logo.png. And we can write the same thing for the other ones. So this one here is going to be Messenger. And this one here is going to be WhatsApp. So now we also have folder icons, which we need to define. So on top of folder name here, we're just going to do const folder icons is equal to style.div once again. And we are going to do background color, and we're going to add a shade of half transparent white. So we're going to do that. And then border radius 1 rem, box sizing border box, display grid template columns, repeat 3 1fr. So now that we've got that, let's also define app icon. So const app icon equals style.img. So it's going to be an image, and we are going to do border radius 0.25 rem. Height is going to be auto, and width is going to be 100%. So the reason we use width 100% is because this will automatically figure out what size this app icon should be. And then we just do width 100% to kind of fill that up. So now that we've got that, let's have a look at our page, and it should be working. So we do have it on the page, and it is quite huge. Let's see what it normally looks like. So it looks like this right now. So the reason it doesn't look perfect yet is because of a couple things. First and foremost, inside of our springboard, we need to specify display grid on this as well, because obviously we have quite a few on each line. So first and foremost, display grid, and we're going to do grid gap 1.25 rem, 1 rem, and grid template columns, we're going to do repeat for 1fr. So now that we've done that, let's also add in some padding as well. So padding of 2 rem like that. Now let's save, and let's have a look at our page. And we've got our icons here like that, but it still doesn't look exactly like what we want it to be. So the reason for that is because inside of folder here, I actually forgot to add something here, which is we're going to add a width of 5 rem and a height of 5 rem here as well. So now that we've done that, if we go back into Google Chrome, you'll notice we have these here like that, and it's looking pretty good already, which is kind of close to the original, although slightly different. So this one has a zoom of 110, and this one is not zoomed at all, 110. So these should be the same. But for some reason, this one appears wider than this one. So the reason it appears wider is probably because of box sizing. So we just need to add box sizing border box onto the springboard here. So now let's have a look at that again. And you'll notice that now it is the same width, but we do have the icons being too big. And the reason for that is twofold. First and foremost, there is no padding around the outside. And secondly, there is no grid gap. So we're going to add both of those in. So here inside of folder icons, we're going to do padding 0.5 rem. And we're also going to be doing a grid gap of 0.25 rem as well. So now that we've done that inside of Google Chrome here, you'll notice that it looks exactly the same as our React iOS Springboard demo. The only thing is that we can't click on these just yet. So now we're going to be implementing that kind of click functionality. And this is where it starts to get quite complicated. Now we need to look at using React Spring within this application. So let's first have a look at the React Spring docs, just to kind of give you guys a little bit of a run through with what we're working with here if you haven't seen that before. So this is React Spring, and it essentially allows you to do animations inside of React in a really nice declarative way. And I'm going to be using this quite effectively in this project to implement the Springboard. So it has quite a few different APIs here. It does support hooks as well, and it can do some really, really cool stuff. So let's have a look at one of the slightly more advanced examples here, which would be this chain animation I saw before. But anyways, let's just get straight into it. So what we're going to do first is we're going to be adding in this overlay on the backdrop before the folders even show up. So in order to do that, actually even before that, is we need to be able to figure out which folder is currently selected. So that is something which belongs inside of Springboard. So what we're going to do here is just write const open folder ID, and then set open folder ID is equal to use state, and then the state here is going to be null, like that. So now that we've got that here, and it is going down onto the next line because of my prettier spacing, which looks kind of weird, but whatever. We are going to add use state into our imports list here as well. And what we're going to do is we are going to specify here another prop, which is on open, and we are going to do set open folder ID equal to folder.id, like that. So this folder ID essentially goes here, and then we set that to the open folder ID. So now we have on open, which we're going to implement inside of here. So we're going to just add another prop here called on open. And I like to remap all of my event listeners like on open to another function name called push, and then the event name. So in this case, push open. And what we'll do is just on the wrapper here, we're going to do on click is equal to push open. Well, actually, more correctly speaking, you probably want to do something like this. And the reason for that is just so we don't have any arguments being passed through. But I mean, either way, it doesn't really matter here. And now we have a state variable, which really doesn't do that much, but we can kind of have a look at it, I guess. So we can put a, say, strong tag here, and then opened folder ID. So we can just confirm that it is in fact working. So if we can see that here somewhere on the page, currently it's null, but then this should give us 1. This should give us 2, and then 3. It's really hard to see, but it's over there. 1, 2, 3. And if we click this one, it should give us 4. So now we've got that. And you'll notice that this one actually appears all the way down on the page. This is a good time to address that issue as well. And the reason for that is because of our display grid. So I'm going to show you how to fix that. But first and foremost, let's add in another one. So let's say number 5, and we'll call this one gaming, just so we can see it in action, and you'll see what I mean. So the gaming actually appears all the way down here. So in order to fix this problem, inside of our Springboard, what we're going to do is we are going to add grid auto rows min content. So this basically means set the height of each row to the minimum size possible based on the content. So now if we go here, you'll notice that our gaming appears up top where it should be, and now we can remove gaming as well. So now that we have an open folder ID, what we can actually do is we can figure out if we have a folder that's currently open or we have nothing open at all. So what we're going to do here is create another component called open folder backdrop. And this one's going to take in a prop called isVisible. And to determine its visibility, we simply write open folder ID is not equal to null. So if we have a folder ID, essentially if this is not null, then we have opened something on the page. So that's what we're going to use here. And now we're going to create open folder backdrop. So first and foremost, let's import it up here. We've got open folder backdrop. And inside of Springboard over here, because we're using it in Springboard, we're going to create this component. So create it like that, right click, new file, index.js, create this file here as well. So now we have open folder backdrop. Let's write this one up. So for this file here, once again, let's add in a wrapper. So this one's going to be a style.div, and we are going to go here and do import styled from styled components, obviously. And inside of here, we are going to do height 100%, width 100%, position absolute. Let's do left 0, top 0. And let's also add a hover effect of cursor pointer. And then for the blur effect, we're actually going to do backdrop filter, blur, and let's just do 20 pixels here. So this is going to be our blur effect. And this is quite new. So its support is kind of dodgy in browsers, and even in Google Chrome, the support is still kind of flaky as well. But we're going to use it because it is really the only thing which allows us to achieve that kind of effect here. So now that we've got that, let's go into our open folder backdrop, and we are going to add in our wrapper. So this is how we normally do it, is we have a wrapper here, and we have an isVisible prop. So if isVisible, then we return the wrapper, otherwise we return null. So something like this would in fact work if I can just get this working on this page here and get it built. Now if we have a look at our code, we've got our 4 things here, and if I click on it, it shows the whole thing blurred out. And then if I refresh, which is the only way to go back, then I can click on something else and the whole thing blurs like this. Now you notice that these lines here are blurred as well. And the reason for that is because our open folder backdrop actually takes up the whole page and it doesn't conform to the size of our springboard. So in order to fix that, inside of our springboard here, we simply need to add position relative to our wrapper. So now that we've done that, if we click on this again, you'll notice that only this part becomes blurred, and this blur effect is actually the same blur effect going on over here. So we just need to zoom this in a little, and it's the exact same blur effect. However, this blur effect goes straight from 0 to 100. There is no animation. So I feel like this is a really good time for us to get React Spring into this component here. So what we're going to do is we are going to be importing animated and use Spring from React Spring. So specifically, animated allows us to work with different components. I'll show that in a second. And use Spring essentially sets up a spring between a value and say any other value, or which you might change it to. So I'll show you how to use that right now. First and foremost, we're going to go into here and we are going to write const spring is equal to use spring, and our spring will take in an object, and inside of this object, we can specify one or more properties. So what we're going to do is we're going to create a property called open amount, and this one's going to take a value, which is if isVisible, then it's going to be 1, otherwise it's going to be 0. So what actually happens is React Spring allows us to animate between the values 1 and 0 in this case, and I'll show you how we do that in just a second. But for our wrapper here, instead of rendering it conditionally, we're always going to render the wrapper like that. So now that we've done that, what we're going to do is let's just first get a primitive version of this working. So for the styled here, we're going to make this, instead of styled.div, we're going to use styled as a function, and we're going to do animated.div like that. So animated.div is in fact a div component, and we can use that with styled components. So we can basically use React Spring with styled components like this, which allows us to create a styled animated component. So that's pretty cool. And what we're going to do is we're going to create an object here called style. And for our style object, inside of here, we're going to specify opacity. So opacity, we're going to set equal to spring.openAmount directly. Now, the reason for that is because open amount goes from 1 to 0. So if open amount is 1, then opacity will also be 1 and it will be showing. If open amount is 0, then opacity will be 0 and it will disappear. So we don't need to do any fancy magic here. So now we're going to add that as a style prop into our style, and React Spring will take care of all the rest of the animation. So now what we're going to do is we're actually going to add pointer events none here, because if we don't add this, then we won't be able to click on the items behind it, because this one, even with opacity 0, it still is a click target, so we can't actually click past it. But by doing pointer events none, it does allow us to do that. So now that it's finished building, we're going to go back into Google Chrome here. Just go over here and refresh that real quick. Not sure what that error was. Now, if I click on it, you'll notice that we get a really nice smooth animation into this state here. However, we don't have a way to animate out of it. we're stuck in this state, we can click on these icons behind it. You'll notice that my cursor goes into a pointer because this one up here is not accepting any pointer events. So pointer events none is something really handy if you've never used this before. But you'll notice that in the original example, we can actually do this really cool kind of effect like that. And the reason that this effect works is because we actually conditionally accept pointer events on this open folder backdrop here as well, because you'll notice that I can actually click here and it will close that. So the way that we get that working is we have to conditionally apply pointer events. So first and foremost, let's go to the backdrop filter, and instead of doing this here, we're actually also going to animate the actual blur effect here as well. So the effect is slightly different, and I'm going to show you how to do that here. So inside of our style here, we're going to add backdrop filter. So we write it in camel case because that's how React expects it. And we're going to do spring.openAmount, and we're going to use something called interpolate. So interpolate open amount. It takes in a single parameter here, and this parameter open amount essentially represents the current value of spring.openAmount. So this probably won't be 0, probably won't be 1. It's probably something in between the two. It can be 0 and 1 depending on if the animation's at the very start or the end, but this function actually gets called many, many times to get the exact value of what we want. So what I'm going to do here is for open amount, I'm going to do blur. And inside of blur here, let's just keep it really simple. Let's just do blur open amount times 20 px. So if open amount is 1, then this will be a blur of 20. If open amount is 0, then this will be a blur of 0. So now that we've done that, let's save this real quick. And now, I don't know if you can tell, but it's a very subtle difference that the blur amount actually comes in slowly as opposed to what it was before. So this is the same blur effect as this one over here. So now, once we've done that, we're also going to add something for pointer events, and this is a little bit complicated. So first and foremost, let's change this blur 20 pixels here. Firstly, get rid of that line there because now we're doing it inside of here, and we're going to do const maximum blur equals 20. So we're going to specify this here, and we're going to use maximum blur instead of the number 20 because we don't like to use magic numbers inside of our code. And we're also going to do const minimum opacity on show is equal to 0.1. And we're going to do const minimum opacity on hide is equal to 0.9. So the reason we have these is basically we need to figure out conditionally when to give our component the ability to capture pointer events. So for example, if we capture it directly afterwards, on this example here, we need to be able to capture it directly afterwards so we can go back into that state here. But essentially, we don't want it to be captured if the component is going out. So for example, if it's going from here back out, what we actually want to do is we want the pointer events to be none for the majority of the transition outwards so that we can click on this one. For example, I can do something like work, click in, and then click out, click productivity, and I can do that really quickly. And the only way I can do that is if pointer events is quickly disabled whilst it's hiding, which is why this is a high number. So the minimum opacity to disable pointer events when we're going out is 0.9, and the minimum opacity to enable pointer events when showing is 0.1. So that's kind of how it works here, and I'm going to write the code for that. So inside of here, we're going to do pointer events, and we're also going to do spring.openAmount.interpolate the open amount here. And we're going to do, actually, I think it might be better to rename this to minimum open amount because we're not doing minimum opacity. It's minimum open amount on show hide. So what we do here is we write curly braces so it's a little bit more readable. We're going to do it return is visible and open amount is greater than or equal to minimum open amount on show. So remember what I said, the minimum open amount on show, and if it is in fact visible, or if it's not visible, and open amount is greater than or equal to minimum open amount on hide, then we're going to show auto, otherwise we're going to show none, so no pointer events here. So the way this is going to work is basically the open amount, if it goes up to say 1, or if it goes past, in this case, 0.1, did I misspell that? No. If it goes past the minimum open amount of 0.1, then what happens is we want to show pointer events auto so that we can detect the click. And for on hide, if it's anything less than 0.9, we're going to show none. So if it's above 0.9, we can still show the pointer events, but if it's less than 0.9, then we're going to show none. So anyways, that's how that works. There actually won't be any change on the page. And the reason for that is because we don't currently have a way to click back out. And we're going to add that right now. So in order to do that, let's just add in an onClose prop here. So onClose to push close. And then inside of our wrapper, we're going to do onClick is equal to push close like that. So once again, just making sure no arguments get passed into push close. So then inside of Springboard here, we're going to do open folder backdrop is visible, and then onClose is equal to, and we're going to do set opened folder ID equal to null. So now once we save that, you'll notice what we can actually do now is click on this, and then we can click anywhere and it'll take us back out. And we can actually do this quite quickly. So we can do bam, bam, and it'll go straight back out like that. But what we should also be able to do is do something like this, and then this, that as well. So I can like click this, click that really, really quickly, even though the animation might still be going on. So I can do that really quickly to re-enable it. And that's what this bit of code here allows us to do. So you notice that this was actually quite smooth. If I do this, and then this, that, and it goes straight back in. But if I disable this bit here on pointer events, so if I get rid of this part here, and I don't know, like I just keep pointer events none, I guess, then you'll notice is that I can't actually like click back out, obviously, and I won't be able to just click on any of the other ones and show anything. So this bit of code here is incredibly important. And speaking of which, we can get rid of this line here now as well. So now that we've done that, we've got the blur effect working, and that's working really well. Now we need to do this animation here from the small folder icons into the large folder icons here. So this one we do inside of the folder component. And what we're going to do here is basically add a whole bunch of stuff to enable folder icons to work correctly. And actually this is quite a complicated process because not only are we enabling folder icons to work well, we also have to make it work with app icon here as well. So what we're actually going to do for this is we are going to try and keep this as simple as possible, but we're going to have to consider the minimum things that we have to implement in order to get this working. So first and foremost, it's important to note that the actual location from which it animates is from a particular location to animate to the middle. And then from the middle, it animates back to the original location. So now the middle is actually dependent upon the size and location of the springboard itself. So we need to take that into account when we're building out our application here. So specifically what I mean by that is our springboard here, we actually need to add in a ref here. So we're going to do use ref, add in that hook here, and we're going to create one called const wrapper ref is equal to use ref. So now that we've done that, what we're going to do is we're going to write wrapper ref equals wrapper ref like that, and we are going to pass this in as the parent ref into our folder components. So now that we've done that, what we can do is we can access parent ref here, and I'm going to show you how I want to use that in just a second. But inside of our folder, we are also going to add another ref, and we're going to call this one folder icons ref. And this one is going to be directly for our folder icons here. So this kind of like the folder icons ref essentially represents where our icons begin, and the wrapper ref or the parent ref here helps us to determine where we want it to go. So we do folder icons ref equals folder icons ref like that. And now what we're going to do is we have our folder icons ref, we have parent ref, and we are going to actually be creating a custom hook to do this. Because after messing around with this code for a really long time, I found that to be the most elegant solution. So I'm going to go into folder, and I'm going to create a file called useinterpolatedstyles.js, and I put an underscore so that it is basically different to component names, especially since macOS is case insensitive. So now here I'm going to do import useinterpolated, if I can spell correctly, styles from /_ use interpolated styles like so. And I'm going to grab this name here. I'm going to go here, and this is the output that we're going to get from this hook here. So we're going to do const, and we are going to do folder icons style in the destructuring equals use interpolated styles, and we are going to be passing in folder icons ref, parent ref, and actually passing in something else as well, which is to determine if this folder is opened or closed. Because if we don't have that, obviously we can't tell whether to open folder icons or not. Remember that the actual open folder is stored inside of our springboard. And the reason we do that is so that we don't have two folders open at the same time. So it makes more sense to store this inside of springboard. So what we're going to do here is we're going to add in a prop. So is open is equal to folder.id triple equals open folder ID like so. Now that we've done that, inside a folder here, we should be able to access is opened, and we should be able to pass that into our hook here as well. So now that we've done that, our folder icon style will get passed into our folder icons, which will then become an animated component here as well, but we're going to do that in just a second. So inside of use interpolated styles, there's actually quite a lot of code that we need to add, so let's just jump straight into it. First and foremost, let's create our use interpolated styles function here, and it's going to take in folder icons ref, is opened, and parent ref, like so, and we're going to save that, and we're going to export default use interpolated styles. The actual Spring here is relatively simple as well, so we're going to do import use Spring from React Spring as well. You've seen this code before, and we're going to write in here const main Spring, and I'll explain why we use main Spring later in the video, but first and foremost, const main Spring equals use Spring, and we are going to write inside of here open amount is open $1 or 0. So you see we use open amount again, and the reason we use open amount is because it's something that's quite generic, and then we can use this and interpolate, build values on top of that later on in our code. So we have const main Spring here, and now what we're actually going to do is write in a couple helper functions. So the first helper function I want to write is called getMiddle. So const getMiddle, and this will get the middle point of an element passed to it. And the reason for that obviously is to get the very middle of our springboard so we can know where we animate to. So const getMiddle equals element, and we are going to do let middle left equal to 0, middle top equal to 0. And what we're actually going to do is we're going to check if element is truthy or falsy. And if it's truthy, then we do stuff to it. If it's falsy, then it would directly return middle left and middle top. So that's why we're writing our function like this, because when we run use interpolated styles for the first time, the element that gets passed into getMiddle, which is our springboard ref, will actually be undefined. So that's why we write this code this way, but it still works out in the end, so everything will be fine. And what we do here is we call this one const wrapper bounding client rect is equal to element dot get bounding client rect. So now after that, we're going to do middle left equal to wrapper bounding client rect dot width divided by 2, and middle top is equal to wrapper bounding client rect dot height divided by 2. So this will be the exact left and top middle coordinates relative to the element that we pass in here. So this is const middle. Let's create another one called const get relative rect. Now this one is a little bit different. The purpose of this one here is to get the relative location of the folder icons div, or the folder icons element, relative to a parent component, in this case the springboard. So what we're going to do here is pass in two parameters here. One is element, one is wrapper, and we're going to do if not element or not wrapper, we're going to return some very simple configuration just like this. So this makes sense as well. And I mean, actually, now that I look at it, we probably could write it in the same way as the other one, which is we can do let height equals 0, left equals 0, width equals 0, or top equals 0, and then width equals 0. So just so we have consistency here, and we can do return height, left, top, width, like so. And if element and wrapper, so if they're both truthy, then inside of here we're going to do const element bounding client rect is equal to element dot get bounding client rect, like so. And we're going to do the same thing for the wrapper. So go to the very front here, grab that, and then do wrapper bounding client rect equals wrapper dot get bounding client rect, like that. And we're going to do height equals element bounding client rect dot height. So this one's pretty simple. The width is pretty simple as well. And we're also going to do left, and left here actually takes wrapper into account. So what we do is we do element bounding client rect dot left. So this is the number of pixels relative to the left of the page. And we're going to minus wrapper bounding client rect dot left, which is the number of pixels that the wrapper is from the left of the page. So when you do this subtraction, you get the relative number of pixels of the element from the wrapper. So we do that, and then we do a similar thing for top here, like so. We have height, left, top, and width, and then we return those down here. So now we have these two functions defined. What we're going to do is we're going to create a ref inside of here. First ref is going to be folder icons rect ref. So this is going to be the rect, which we get up here. So the relative rect, which comes from get bounding client rect. That's how we get that name. And we're going to do use ref, and by default, we're going to do curly braces in here as the default value. So by default, it's an empty object, and we're going to do a similar thing for the parent here as well. So we're going to do inside of here, use effect, And we're going to define this use effect here to only run on component mount. And we're going to do folder icons rect ref.current is equal to get relative rect here, folder icons ref.current. So this we pass in our function here into the hook, and we also do parent ref.current. Remember, the first property is the element, the second one is the wrapper or the parent, so that's what we're passing in here to get the relative rectangle. And we're also going to do parent rect ref.current is equal to get middle parent ref.current. So the reason we do this is so that we can get the middle of the springboard, and the reason we do this is we can get the relative location of the folder icons to the parent springboard container here. So now that we've done that, the reason that we do this inside of use effect is when we do it inside of use effect like this, so basically component did mount, we wait until the actual component has finished mounting and all the refs have become defined. Because if we try to do it directly outside of here, folder icons ref and parent ref will be undefined in the first run. And I guess that's fine here because we do have safety precautions against that in this code. But the reason we do it inside of here is because this means that we only do it once when the component mounts. So get bounding client rect is relatively computationally expensive, so you don't want to do it unnecessarily. So I thought we might just do it inside of here, as our page doesn't really change. We don't have issues pertaining to the actual locations being updated, etc. and so on. So we're just going to do this for now. So what we're going to do here is basically we are going to need to pass back folder icon style. So we have const folder icon style like this, and we are going to be returning that. Obviously, we do need to define some things inside of folder icon style. And specifically, we are going to be defining, first and foremost, where exactly it is on the page, and the actual height, the width, the padding, all sorts of stuff to make it flow seamlessly from a small size to a much larger size. So the first thing we're going to do here is write const I is equal to mainSpring.openAmount.interpolate.bind mainSpring.openAmount. Now, if you don't understand what this code means, basically, the reason we do this is we have a little shortcut instead of writing mainSpring.openAmount.interpolate many times in our code. But the reason we do .bind mainSpring.openAmount is because if we try to directly rename it like this, we actually lose the context of the function itself. So then this value changes. So by doing .bind mainSpring.openAmount, we have the correct this value inside of I, which allows our code to work correctly. So inside of folder icon style here, we're going to first do a change to the width and the height. So these two actually take the same size here, so they have the same width and height. And what we're going to do is we're going to write height folder icons size and width folder icons size as well. And obviously we're going to define that right here. So const folder icon size, and we are going to use the newly created I, and this will take in obviously open amount here as well. And we are going to do a new height based upon the open amount. But now that we're doing this, we're actually going to create a helper function. So we're going to create inside of src here a new file called helpers interpolate.js. So this file here is just a really simple one-liner, and this is how the file works. So const interpolate equals num1 num2 amount, and then we're going to return here num1 plus num2 minus num1 times amount, and we're going to export default interpolate. So the purpose of this function is so that we can do things like, let's just say interpolate, we have two numbers, which is a range, like say, for example, 0 to 10. And the last number is a number between 0 and 1, representing how close we want to be to num1 or num2. So if we do say 0.5 here, this will return us 5. If we do 0.2, this should return us 2. If we do 1 here, this should return us 10. And if we do 0, this should return us 0. So for another example, if we did say 10 and 20, and we did 0, this would actually return us 10 because it would give us the first number. So this is really useful in React Spring. I do like to include this in order to figure out where our animations should come from and where they should go and where it should be at any particular point. So now that we've got this here, we're going to use that inside of this file here by importing it first and foremost. Import interpolate from the helpers directory. But in order to import it from here, we should set up an alias inside of here so we don't have to use a relative import. So we're going to do hash root is equal to /src, and that'll take the src directory here. We're going to Control-C this, and we're going to re-yarn watch again. And then we're going to do hash root /helpers interpolate like so. So this should allow us to include that file. It is giving us an error because of this here. And what we're going to do is before we actually finish writing this line, we're going to define two constants up here at the top. So in the spirit of not using magic numbers, we're going to define two constants here. First one is folder icons closed size rem is equal to 5. Folder icons open size rem is equal to 25. So we're using the rem units here. We start off at a closed size of 5, and then when we open it, it goes to 25. The reason we use 5 here is because we're actually currently using 5 here as well. So we're going to do that here, and then closed and open. So now let's just copy this one, go inside of our file here where we've got open amount, and we're going to do backticks, and we're going to write interpolate, and we're going to first do closed, which is the smaller one, and then folder icons open size rem, and we're going to do open amount, go outside this curly brace and write rem at the very end. And what we can actually do is go back into folder. We've got use interpolated styles, and we're going to take folder icon style, apply it to the actual folder icons here, and we have to make folder icons an animated div. So to do that, let's just do import animated from React Spring like so. And inside of folder icons, we're going to do styled animated.div like that. So now that we've done that, we should be able to go into Google Chrome, and our page currently isn't working, which is weird. I forgot to use ref up here at the very top. So we need use effect, and we also need use ref. So we're going to include those. Import use effect, use ref from React. That's totally my bad. So now that we've done that, we have our page loaded, which is really cool. And we can do this. That's cool. And we can do that. And we can do that. And we can do that. And we can click here and they'll all close down. So we kind of have that effect going on, but the reason that the whole thing obviously goes out to the side is because we don't have position absolute set up and we don't have it going here into the middle. So in order to address that issue, before we do so, let's actually go back into VS Code and let's remove the width and height here from folder icons, because the default width and height can now also be controlled by our interpolate function over here. So we start at a closed size rem of 5, which gives us a default of 5 here when they're closed. If I change this to 2, you'll notice that everything here becomes a lot smaller. But then the animations are still smooth all the way down to that size. In terms of the styles that we apply to folder icon style, there are some other things that we need to apply here as well. So what we're going to do is we're actually going to add in position absolute, and we're going to interpolate that here. So we're going to do position I and open amount. So the way it's going to work is if open amount is exactly equal to 0, then we can set it to static. Otherwise, we set it to absolute. So this essentially just allows us to move it around on the page properly. I don't even think we need to set it to static. I think if we keep it at absolute all the time with the correct left and top values, this will still work fine. But I mean, I think it's probably better to keep it static at 0. So I mean, this works for now. So we don't need to worry too much about that. We have this here. And if we click on it, you'll notice that it kind of does that, which is pretty cool. But you'll notice one thing, I'm not sure if you can tell, it is kind of subtle, but if you click on it, then the word work actually appears up at the top and then comes back down, and the same for productivity as well. And the reason for that is because now that this element is position absolute, this one naturally moves to the top of the flexbox. So in order to fix this issue, inside of folder here, for our wrapper, instead of doing column no wrap, which goes from top to bottom, we're going to do column reverse no wrap. So this one will go from bottom to top. Now the problem is that our text then appears on the top. So to fix that, all we have to do is move our folder icons underneath our folder name. So now it's kind of like a double reverse. And if I click on that, you'll notice that the word productivity stays exactly where it is. Obviously, the position of our folder icons is not correct, but we can look at fixing that literally right now. So let's go back out to about 150 should be okay. Yeah, that position is definitely not right. So let's look at fixing that up. So inside of use interpolated styles here, let's start adding in the left and the top. So now the left and the top values are kind of tricky here because we need to specify them in terms of pixels. And the reason for that is because our getBoundingClientRect function here, which we're using here and we're also using there, this one naturally returns the width and the height and the left and the top and all that in pixels. However, we've decided to use rem for the major part of this project, and the reason for using rem is because then we can scale the size of the application up and down based on the HTML tag, and so that the layout and the size of the page will accommodate to the default font size set by the user. So in order to get both of these working, what we need to do is inside of SRC here, I'm going to create a directory called config and a file called styledcomponents.js. So this is going to hold some configuration for styled components here. And specifically, we are going to write export const rem in px is equal to 16. And we're going to specify that in order to define the number of pixels in a rem. And obviously this can change, and we can change the kind of size of our page based upon this number. But now that we have this number here, inside of components root, what we're going to do is we're going to actually apply that as a global style to make sure that our HTML tag uses the right font size. So what we're going to do is write import rem in px from #root/config/styled components like that. And we're going to go here and write HTML font size rem in px like that. So now that we've done that, we shouldn't really see any major changes on the page because the default HTML font size is 16 anyways. But now that we have rem in pixels, we can actually use this inside of use interpolated styles, and I'll explain how we're going to do that in just a second. So specifically, let's put in our left property here. So we're going to write left I open amount. As always, we started off like this. And what we're going to do is if open amount is exactly equal to 0, then we don't need to specify a left value. So it can just be auto, which is the default value. However, if it is not, then we interpolate from folder icons rect_ref.current.left. So let me explain what this is. This is the starting position for our folder icons. So the starting position is where it is on the page by default. So for example, right here. And this number here specifically is the number of pixels that this folder icons container here is from this edge of the Springboard wrapper. So that's actually what we get inside of folder icons rect_ref. Remember, we're using a relative rectangle here. So that's what we're doing here as the starting position. And then for the ending position, we're going to make it want to go to middle left. However, middle left is the very middle. So if the left position starts here, then it's going to be going off over there. So we don't really want that. So we need to actually take away a certain amount. And the amount we're going to be taking away is folder icons open size rem. Remember, we have the open size over here, which is 25, times rem in px divided by 2. So this is the total size of the expanded container, but we're going to be dividing that by 2 because we're going to the halfway point in the middle. So you kind of take away half of the width. So for example, left, let's just say that this whole container was 1000 pixels, then half of it will be 500. So if you had a left of 500, then it would start here. However, if my folder icons when expanded had a size of 600 pixels, for example, then it should be 200 pixels from the left. And the way you work that out is 500 minus half of 600, which is 500 minus 300, which then becomes 200. So we've got middle left minus that over here, but we didn't import rem in px on this page here. So we're going to import that on the top. Import rem in px from root/config/styled components like that. And now inside of this file here, on this part here, let's just add a comma at the very back here. If we do that, it should be able to work correctly. So now that we have left, let's see if that actually shows correctly on the page. Let's zoom back out to normal size and let's click on work. And it doesn't seem to be working at all because middle left is not defined. That's my bad. Middle left is actually inside of parent rect_ref.current. So what we can simply do is just, let's just say right here, we can do const middle left, middle top, which we will need for the top property as well, parent rect_ref.current. So we're just going to destructure that real quick. And now if I click this, it should take us to the correct location. I'm not sure why that isn't the case. Let's see if we can figure that out. So the left value seems to be auto for some weird reason. My bad here, I totally forgot the third argument in interpolate here. So we also need to add in the open amount, which interpolates it properly for us. So now that we've done that, if I click on work and I close this, we should be able to go to right here in the middle. So you notice that this is actually here in the middle between those two. So now we can do a similar thing for top, and then you'll see it be right here in the middle of the page. So now let's put this here. Let's change these ones here all to top. This one should be a capital T like that. And that should just work straight off the bat like that. So now if I click here, it goes straight into the middle. So that's beautiful. That's actually working perfectly just fine like that. The animation speed is actually a bit faster. So we can implement that here. What we're going to do is we are going to be specifying const spring config is equal to, and we're going to write friction 40 and tension 400. If you want more information on this, you can check the React Spring documentation. They do have an example which kind of shows different Spring configurations, and you can mess with it yourself to kind of see how that feels. But this is what I felt works pretty well and quite accurately represents the feeling within iOS. So now I'm going to grab Spring config here, and inside of our use Spring, on open amount here, I'm going to write config Spring config like that, and it will configure the way that the Spring works here. So now that we've done that, we can click, and it gives us quite a quick, snappy animation like that. And that looks really, really cool. However, we do have some more problems here. Firstly, the padding isn't correct. And secondly, the grid gap isn't correct either. So you notice here that we have additional gaps between the grid elements here and also additional padding. So that's something that needs to scale up, and also the border radius of the app icons themselves. So now let's first have a look at fixing up this padding here. So the way we do that is we just need to specify the padding in this folder icon style here. So we're going to add in padding here. And for the padding, it's relatively simple, but we do need to define some configuration as to what padding we should be starting on and what padding we should be finishing on. So for the padding here, I'm going to do open amount, and we are going to do backticks, interpolate, and I'm going to create these in just a second, but padding close rem, padding open rem, open amount, and then specify rem after that, put a comma, and we are going to go up here and we're going to specify const padding close rem, and this is going to be equal to 0.5, and const padding open rem is going to be equal to 2. So now that we have this, we actually don't need to specify the padding inside of folder icons here anymore, because you see how we're starting on 0.5 and ending at 2. When we have this animation, it will automatically figure out what this should be at any stage in the process. So now that we've got that, go back over here and we're going to click it and we get that padding. Click back and we get that padding here as well. So that has the same padding as this one here. Only difference is the grid gap here and also the border radius. And also this title here, which we're going to implement just a little bit later on as well. So what we're going to do here is add in const grid gap closed rem, and we're going to start at 0.25 because that's what we have here. And we're going to do const grid gap opened rem is equal to 2. So now that we have that, it's pretty much just the same process. I'd probably just copy this, put it up here, call this one grid gap, and then do, if I can do this, grid gap closed rem, opened rem, that should be fine. So now if I save that, we can get rid of grid gap here as well because we're specifying it here. And now you see we get that nice grid gap there. We do have the border radius here on the app icons. In order to do that, what we have to do is we have to realize that the actual app icons themselves aren't being styled here. So we can't add the border radius to folder icons because that is this border radius here. So in order to get it working for app icons, what we have to do is firstly turn app icons into an animated image here. So styled animated.img like that. And the second thing we're going to have to do is go here and put app icon style, and we're going to grab app icon style and we're going to add it to all three of our icons here like that. So obviously we don't have app icon style yet, but we're going to create that right now. So this one's relatively simple compared to that one. We're just going to go probably here and write const app icon style is equal to border radius in an object like that. And then once again, open amount. And we are going to do an interpolate again. And this one's going to do border radius close rem, border radius open rem, open amount outside here, type rem, semicolon there. So now this one takes border radius closed and opened, and we're going to define them up here. Firstly, let's look at what the border radius is by default. So by default, it is 0.25. So we're going to actually do that right here. Const border radius closed rem is going to be 0.25. However, what should the border radius be when it's opened? Well, what it actually should be is it should maintain the same ratio. So you notice here is that the border radius itself has to increase, but it doesn't actually increase relative to the increase in size of the folder icons thing itself. So in order to do that, we have to actually use this ratio here, which is a 5 times multiplication ratio. So to do that, we can do const border radius opened rem is equal to folder icons open size rem divided by folder icons closed size rem multiplied by border radius closed rem. Now that we do this, because we are using these two, we have to put these two on top like that. So I'll probably separate those just to make sure that it's clear that these two are needed in this section here. So now that we've done that, we should be able to go back here and check out our new border radius. However, for some reason, it is not working. App icon style, we forgot to return it. There we go. Now that we've done that, we go here and we get that nice look right there. So we basically have everything implemented for the most part. However, one thing I want to do is, just going back a little bit, is inside of open folder backdrop, I actually use open amount times maximum blur. I don't think this is ideal here because I actually want to make use of the interpolate function that we have, just to make it clear that we are in fact interpolating as opposed to working with a maximum blur here like this. So I prefer to just do, if I can delete that part there, go here and just write interpolate 0 to the maximum blur and then open amount here like that. This would mean that we have to import interpolate, but I think that it's worth it here just so that we have a more consistency across our application. So we have root helpers interpolate like that, and we have most of our stuff set up now, which is pretty cool. You'll notice we have this working, this is fine, this is fine. The animations are snappy, it works really, really well, but we don't have this thing here. Now this is actually quite interesting because you'll notice that when it fades in, it actually has a bit of a delay, but then when it fades out, it instantly fades away. So we need to be able to implement that properly here as well. First and foremost, inside of folder.js here, we're going to create a new one here called opened folder name. So this one is specifically the open folder name, well, when it actually opens, and it's also going to take in folder.name like that. So let's add in some CSS for this one here. Const open folder name is equal to style.span, and we're going to make this one animated in just a second. And we're going to do color is white. Font size is going to be 2.5 rem. We're going to do pointer events none because we don't want people clicking on it and doing stuff with that. We're going to do position absolute. And we're also going to do transform translate minus 50%. So what this allows us to do is, this will come in handy in just a little bit and you'll see exactly why later on. But now we're going to do that. And for our open folder name, actually, let's just make this one an animated span straight away. And we're going to pass in style is equal to, and matching the same convention we used here, opened folder name style, like that. And we're going to put this into our destructuring here. We're going to go into use interpolated styles, add it in here, opened folder name, and we are going to write some code to get this working. So it's going to just be an object here. However, this one is going to use a different string, which is why we named this one here main string, because this is like a second string that we have to use. So just on top of this one here, I'm going to do const open folder name spring is equal to use spring. And this one's going to take the same config because those options are pretty nice. But we are going to add here a slightly different syntax. We're going to go from opacity 0. So we're specifying opacity straight away. And we're going to go to opacity is opened. If it's open, then it's 1, otherwise it's 0. So the from is basically like the starting configuration. So it's like when we first load this component, we're at 0, and the 2 basically says what it is at this moment. So if it is open, then it might be 1, but then after it is open, if we close it, then it'll go back to 0. So that's what we specify here. And inside of open folder name style, for our left, we are going to do middle left pixels. And we are not going to use any sort of interpolation because this does not need to be animated. But the reason that we're actually specifying it here is because it's quite difficult to specify here unless you add in a use effect and you work around and you do a whole lot of stuff here. So we might as well just do it here where we already have access to these values. For our top, we are going to do top, and we're going to do middle top minus opened folder name offset rem times rem in px. And we're going to write px at the end here. So we're going to add in open folder name offset rem up top. So maybe add that in right here. And the amount of rem that we're going to offset it, basically just the amount we're going to move it up, is going to be 22. So this is the one that I found to look most similar to the iOS look that we have on the phone. So we have open folder name offset rem times rem in px because this is the px value, so we need to multiply it by, in this case, 16. So now that we have these two, we also need to add in opacity. So opacity is relatively simple. Just do opacity is going to be open folder name spring dot opacity like that. So now that we have these ones here, let's save it and let's make sure that we are using this. In fact, so that is correct. So that shouldn't be grey, whatever. Now let's have a look at our page. Now you'll notice I did not actually add in anything for the delay yet, but I'm going to show you what this looks like now. So if I click on this, you'll see that this fades in, I click away and it fades out straight away. However, if we want to add in that delay, we have to use something here called the delay property. So we add that into our spring here, call it delay, and we're going to add one called opened folder name show delay ms. So this is one we're going to add up here as well. We're going to put it right here, const the delay, and the amount of delay that we want here is going to be 500. So I found that to look the most similar. So now that we've got that there, let's save this. And this won't work exactly, but I'm going to show you what it looks like anyways. So click on that and there's that delay. But then when we fade out, you see it takes its time with that as well. So in order to get around this issue, we simply need to do is open. And if it is open, we do have a delay. If it's not open, then the delay we have is 0. So basically coming in, the delay is 500. Going out, the delay is 0. So now let's try again. Click and it comes in, click away and it goes out straight away. So that's the whole project, guys. Thank you for following along. I really enjoyed building out this project and kind of working with it, tinkering with it. A couple things before I finish up that I want to note. You guys might say this is a whole lot of configuration and these names are super long and the code is like super verbose. However, I have found in my experience that writing out long names is better than having to go through spaghetti code. Having names like this actually makes the code quite readable and quite legible and easily understandable comparatively. So this, I think, is actually really, really important. Overall, you'll notice that we have put a lot of stuff into this use interpolated styles hook file here, which is really quite cool because it means that it keeps our components relatively lightweight. Like our folder component is only 84 lines and our Springboard component is only 48. So designing these kinds of things well when working with React Spring and with any kind of React code in particular is incredibly important. Now, I'm sure there are ways to even improve this. I don't see this as being perfect, but I do feel relatively confident that this is quite well designed. As always, I will be putting this code up on GitHub, so you guys will have access to that if you guys want that. Thank you guys for watching. Please leave a like if you enjoyed the video. This has been Lucas from Better Coding Academy, and see you guys later.